Hello, everybody. It's Friday, and that means it's time for another topic of the week. Normal preamble to start us off. Last week's topic on special characters. A lot of good responses about that. And what I found interesting in both the comments and the videos were how people see special characters so differently. And special shout out here to Skull Bros Tabletop, which I linked in the original video. And they threw out their first topic of the week response, which I thought was awesome. So definitely go check that out, give that a watch. And he had made a very good point in the video talking about how he started back in 5th edition, which is not too far from when I started. And he says, he came from a time when special characters or even normal characters could just run the table, could just kill everything. And that resonated very true to me. There was a long period of time in that era where we didn't play lords. Like collectively, we made an agreement that we were not going to allow lords on our table because they were just too powerful and they would just kill. Like depending on who was playing, the other side could literally have nothing in their army that could even wound the lord. Um, so, and special characters were obviously in many cases a cut above even that. So I find it interesting the sort of varied take on them. Some people talk about how much they loved them, and uh, it's definitely something that also resonates with me because the other point that was made frequently by many people was special characters are sort of our window into the narrative. It's a specific person and the eyes through which we see the world. It's hard to experience whatever the world is through like generic Spearman number 4. Like I don't, it becomes numbers. When I hear just about like an army get, you're reading a story, like this is one of the problems in the end times stories. You're reading through and it's like, oh, and then this unit just gets ripped in half and these people all die, and I'm like, who cares? It's just irrelevant. They were faceless, nameless nothings. It doesn't. I don't care that they lived. I don't care that they died. It's irrelevant. Investment is the only thing that makes violence have a point in any kind of media, and including this. And special characters are the type of people we get invested in. When Vlad dies at the end of Archaon, it's one of the most beautiful moments in the book. It's a buildup of 5 books of character development, and this arc is so perfect, and the way it comes to an end is so perfect. I won't spoil it, but I really would recommend reading it, if nothing else, but for that. I would love it if I could literally just pull all the paragraphs that concern Vlad out, because he really just does amazing things there. So there's always been this tension between how much and how important the characters are to our experience in the narrative and how much they can cause problems in the game. And I think something that many people mentioned is that, Age of Sigmar really kind of fixes that in a way because, with a few exceptions, let's take out Big Papa Nagash and Archaon, but with those two out of the equation, I don't really know that there's much other that requires any kind of like anything more than a pack of goblins to bring down if you play them stupidly. It's extremely balanced in the fact that a large enough group of dum dums just running around can stab a big giant character to death. Like as good as Karl Franz is, and he'll wade into some troops and do some damage, but if he gets surrounded by enough little one wound pudwhackers, they're going to bring him down, or at the very least do some heavy, heavy damage to him and make him highly combat ineffective because of that decreasing table. So I think we might honestly finally be in a good place. But as always, there's a lot of interesting responses, and I would highly go recommend you check them out. That original last week's video will be linked below. So let us turn to this week's topic of the week. So this week we had on Relian and Lucky Sixes, Brad and Andrea, and they talked about Holy Wars. And one of the really awesome things they shared was the way that these scenarios worked and how they were all keyed to the terrain and the specific table you were playing on at Holy Wars GT. And I saw a lot of that terrain. I highly recommend everybody go look at the Holy Wars GT Twitter account if you want to see, or I think you can just go to holywarsgt.com. But if you want to see just the amazing terrain, and Steve spent like months making this terrain for this tournament because he would share work in progress on Twitter, and it is really impressive. Um, but in there, the scenarios were so impactful to the game. And that's what I want to talk about this week. I want to talk about scenarios in war games. And I really want to focus in on here is how much should scenarios matter? Okay? And what I mean by that is how much does the criteria of the scenario, the victory and loss conditions, matter? And how much does it matter to you? What is the right type of sort of balance to you for scenario play? Let me make this a little more real. I think one of the problems with 8th edition and many editions of Warhammer is that it had the hierarchy completely wrong. Killing your enemy was the way you won. Scenarios sat underneath that in importance. Because all they ever did is shift victory conditions, or sorry, not even victory conditions. They shifted around sort of victory points by some percentage. And anytime you're just moving victory points by some percentage, unless it's 100%, you know what I mean? Like, there's a line, of course. But unless it's a really, really, really big percentage, it's not enough. If I can ignore the scenario rules, more or less completely, and win by simply killing you, then the game is about killing you. Period. The scenario becomes a fun nice to have that can occasionally be impactful, right, in a close, really close game. But my incentive is still, my chief incentive is still just to wipe you off the map. If I wipe you off the map, if I win by 1,000 points, but you obtained 10% objectives, I don't care. I still win by a landslide. Right? So the problem is the hierarchy was completely wrong. The hierarchy should look like this. Scenario and the victory conditions of it, in my estimation, should be at the top. This is my opinion on it, and this is what I'm keen to know if you agree or how you feel about this. So the scenario sets how you win or lose. Period. You only win by doing what's here, and you only lose by not doing what's here. Sometimes what's here can be killing, right? I am not opposed to the idea that a scenario is murder each other. No, that's a great scenario. I love pitch battles, okay? But it's the hierarchy. At the same time, there should also be scenarios where literally, if you control 2 out of 3 objective markers at the end of the game, you win. Doesn't matter if you have 2 figures on the table and they have their whole army. You win. You're sitting 1 figure on each objective marker. Victory is yours. Okay? To me, that's such a better game for many reasons. One, I truly believe in my heart of hearts that it makes the game more balanced because the individual killing power of a unit becomes less important. If all that matters is achieving a varied set of victory conditions over multiple games, especially in a tournament setting, then I can't solve for the equation as easily of how good a unit is. Because a unit that's not very killy, but is extremely fast and mobile, could be very valuable in that. But if all that matters is kill, if all you need is kill, if kill sits up here, then that unit is immediately less good. Right? Because, yeah, they're fast. I guess I can use them as chaff or hunt a war machine or something like that. Maybe I can assassinate a character if he wanders out alone. Those are valuable, I guess. But they don't really make me win. They're just kind of, if the situation comes up, yay, I guess. Right? But if sometimes I've got to be fast and mobile, and sometimes I've got to be rock hard and stationary and defending something, and sometimes I need to do a mix of both or whatever, units become much harder to define as good or bad. Because they're good in varied situations. So that's the number one reason I think scenarios should be the top. 2, in my own personal experience, the game is just more engaging when there are interesting scenarios. I played a lot of Mordheim back in the day, and as you know, we wrote a new version of Mordheim for Age of Sigmar, and Mordheim was a more or less completely scenario-defined game. There was a scenario that was just murder the other guy. Excuse me. And that was a great scenario. But there was also scenarios to collect treasure and rescue princesses and, find and explosives factories and whatever. It doesn't matter. And those were great because they were narrative, they were engaging, you had to have varied types of troops. it rewarded you for having a more balanced force that could operate in a lot of different sort of tactical ways. And 3, I've always felt that scenario play was a better test of skill because the thing you're trying to achieve is not held stationary. It's an interesting thing to me that the sort of pitched battle classic lineup was considered the test of skill. I never understood that. To me, the good general, the best generals in history, are the ones who not only had a great plan and sort of before the battle started had chosen the field of battle well and had prepared the right troops and brought them to the right battlefield, but who then could most quickly and easily adjust to the changing battlefield conditions. And that's what scenarios guarantee. It's one of the reasons I really love Malifaux, is because of the combination of strategy and schemes and the way it can make the game so different on the fly every time, and how you have to think so smart on how you play, and how part of what your opponent is trying to achieve might even be hidden from you. So you have to like think about what do I need to be doing? What do I need to do to win? What are my avenues of victory here? And at the same time, what are they secretly trying to achieve, and how can I get in their way and stop them? To me, that's 100% engagement, because I really have to think deeply about the situation and what's going on, while at the same time still maneuvering troops around and, making attacks and doing all the normal crap. So for me personally, scenarios are a huge part of the game. And my love affair with them, to share one final story, started way back in the first game of 40K that I played. The very first game of 40K I played, the way that my friends got me into 40K was we were at the store, and at our friendly local game store, and there was a box that was Schaefer's Last Chancers. If everybody remembers these. But they're basically a knockoff of the Dirty Dozen. So it was like 12 ragtag Imperial Guard specialist troops, all of whom had special rules. And they were meant to be played sort of, you could use them as a unit in a larger army, or you could play them alone against full armies. And then if you did, they got extra special rules to make them kind of on par, because you only got 12 dudes. And the very first game I played was my 12 guys against 1,000 points of Dark Eldar. And I won the game. And I won the game with Schaefer himself on top of the hill, the objective in the center. It was to hold this objective and secure this thing at the top of round, let's say 5, or something, bottom of round 5, whatever, doesn't matter. Some variable round. And Schaefer himself was my last guy alive at the end of the turn, with a bunch more Dark Eldar alive, all coming for me. And then the game ended, and all I could see was just Schaefer grabbing the helicopter and just flying away with the objective, whatever he had stolen from the top of that hill. It was him and like the sniper who was set up in stealth cover way on the edge of the board, and I could just see that guy just floating back into the shadows. The rest of the Dirty Dozen, well, they're dirty dead guys now. And I just thought it was so fun, and I loved it, and it made me go out and buy a whole Imperial Guard army, so it must have worked. So I think scenarios, 1, are fun and engaging, and 2, what that story I think also says, they also help bring new people in the game because they're so engrossing. And when you're new and you step up and you have this really deep experience, I think it can really lock you in and make you love it. That right there made me love 40K. Later then going on and playing a lot of pitched battles over and over again, where it was me just firing 12 tanks at the orcs who were charging across the board in red trucks at me, and either I shot them dead out of their vehicles or they got to me and murdered me, made me not love 40K, given the edition I was playing in. So I should have learned my lesson then and stuck to the scenarios. So that was a lot of complex thoughts about that. So let me sum up, because this is a long topic of the week. What I would love to talk about is, 1, what do you think of scenarios in general across games? And what games do you play that use scenarios that you think work really well? 2, how much do you think scenarios are important in, say, Age of Sigmar? For me personally, I know I would say highly important, like critical, as in I almost can't imagine playing the game without it. And 3, do you think scenarios should be the ultimate definer? The victory conditions printed in the scenario should be the ultimate definer of the win and loss of the game. Accepting that one of the scenarios out there that exists is just murder the other person, in which case the sort of traditional assumptions of how we played for a couple editions would hold true. but that becomes subservient to the master rule, which is the scenario determines victory. So there you go. Longer topic this week, but I had a lot to say. I am very excited to hear your responses. Post in the comments below, and or, as always, make a response video. I will link those down below so that everybody can always return here and see all the great responses. Thank you so much. See you next time.